7:02 p.m. I'm going to call to order this evening's meeting of the Grafton Board of Appeals. I do have to go through some guidelines because we're doing this in a non-traditional fashion that's quickly becoming a tradition. So, as a preliminary matter, my name is Bill McCusker, the Zoning Board of Appeals Chairman. First thing I'd like to do is confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. DeRosiers.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans.
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Mr. Parisi.
Yes.
For staff, Ms. Koshavos.
Yes.
Is Mr. Berger with us?
No, he's not.
Okay. And there's no one in the AV room. And for our first case, Mr. Mason, can you hear us and can you respond, please?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Thank you. I know there's others on the call right now who will be joining us for other cases coming up later. We'll make sure you all can hear at that time. This open meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted to the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment for the public hearing portion only. There's one public hearing. That's going to be case number 873, immediately following my comments now. For this meeting, the Grafton Zoning Appeals is convening by video conference via Zoom with dial-in access as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see what you and that you see may be able to see you, and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording of this meeting. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are available on the town website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We'll soon be turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will allow ZBA members to comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will acknowledge public comments, questions received in advance of the meeting, followed by real-time board and or applicant responses. For public comment, request acknowledgement to speak, please use the chat feature in Zoom to request to speak. The meeting administrator will enable you to speak when it's your turn. For those on the phone, actually, we don't have that ability tonight because we have no AV staff in the building. The meeting administrator will read real-time comments and questions typed by computer participants in the chat feature, followed by real-time board applicant responses. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay. So, I apologize. I don't have my cheat sheet with me. Okay. So at this time, the first order of business will be case number 873, 14 Apple Ridge Lane rear, requesting a variance. At this time, I'll ask Do I have you guys introduce yourselves? I think I just went through everyone's name, so I don't think I need to do that. The way we'll proceed is that the clerk will read the petition, and the way we will proceed is that the clerk will read the petition, and after the clerk has read the petitioner will have the floor and will have the opportunity to present their case. There will be a 15-minute time limit for the petitioner. This time limit can be extended with consent of the board. The petitioner shall present required information, and all comments should be specific. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition will have an opportunity to do so. Any letters in favor will be read into the record. Anybody in opposition to speak, and any letters in opposition will be read into the record. Opposition will also have a 15-minute time limit. After the evidence is presented, the board will enter discussion and hopefully come up with a decision. At any time during this hearing and prior to a decision being made by this board, the petitioner has the option to request that the petition be withdrawn without prejudice or continued until a later date at which further evidence in support of the petition can be presented. We've already talked about how public participation is going to happen. At this point, the board may ask questions from time to time. However, all conversation should be directed to the chair. Again, you'll ask for the ability to speak. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to read the petition. You're muted, Kay. Kay, you're muted.
Sorry. The Grafton Board of Appeals has received a petition from David Mason for 14R Apple Ridge Lane, requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals allow frontage of 100 feet where 125 feet is required and lot width of 50 feet where 125 feet is required. Book 9411, page 331. The board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, January 14th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom conference to consider this request and or to take whatever action is necessary, including the granting of a finding, special permit, variance, or other necessary relief allowed under the zoning bylaw. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection at the Town of Grafton website on the Zoning Board of Appeals 48 page. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March stay-at-home advisory, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Zoning Board of Appeals, William McCusker, Chairman, Kay Reed, Clerk, Marianne DeRozier's Vice Chair, William Yeomans, Member Number 1, Brian Waller, Member Number 2, Carl Parisi, Alternate. Case number 873, Grafton News, Thursday, December 31st, 2020, and Thursday, January 7th, 2021.
Thank you. We have 5 permanent members. Does anyone need to recuse themselves from this hearing? So with that in mind, Mr. Mason, you have the floor.
Okay. Yes, we were in front of you in 2015. I went with my mother. My mother has owned the land since 1976. She got basically the same variance I am seeking. She sold me the lot and I was going to build a house on it. I wasn't aware that the variance would expire. We recorded the variance at the Registry of Deeds and I just wasn't aware that they expired. So I applied for a building permit last year, and that's when I was informed that the variance had expired. So basically I'm seeking the same variance that she had been granted in 2015, seeking basically the same relief. There's basically 24 acres. There's substantial wetlands across the middle of the property, which limit the development to the frontage unless you had a major wetland crossing. In the front of the property wouldn't support enough houses to do the whole sewer thing, and to cross the wetland would be a substantial wetland crossing through conservation. So we have decided to just basically try and get one house lot approved here. We've created a no disturb buffer from all the abutters up front where the house is going to be built. We showed a building zone where the house is going to be built, and basically the driveway is running up the 50-foot strip. The 50-foot strip is basically enough land to put a subdivision road in. However, we're just going for a driveway up there. And we're just seeking a relief on the frontage due to wetlands topography. We're just building a house. There's all houses in the area, so I don't think it'll be detrimental to the neighbors. I think it'll actually be an improvement, as we created a buffer zone, and only one house is definitely better than a subdivision. So we're basically seeking the relief on the frontage to build a single-family house. Guess that's about all I really have to say. I do have my engineer. I think he's not on video, he's on audio only. So if you have any questions regarding wetlands or anything for him, he is available, I believe, on this call.
Okay, any questions or comments or thoughts from the board? Mr. Yeomans, are you trying to get our attention?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only question is, have any changes been made to the plan since it was approved? I think it was a few years back. Are there any, is what you're asking us to approve tonight exactly the same as what we approved?
The only thing we did was we created the building area over a much larger property, just because I didn't want to limit. If someone wanted to build a barn out back, it's 24 acres, and originally we had like a 1 acre build zone, and you put into the findings that included accessory buildings, and I just didn't want to limit that if someone wanted to build a barn for horses or something like that. And also, the only other thing is we had done the no disturb zone around the entire property, and basically we kept that in place where it affected abutters. Out back, it abuts town land, and it abuts some houses on McGill. I think it's McGill Drive. Actually, it's not McGill Drive, but he built the development. And I just wanted to not do that because the property goes right to stone walls. So I didn't want a no cut zone, because if there's trees out there, if they ever wanted to do tree cutting or anything like that, there's still a no build zone, but it's not a no cut zone. Just so if someone wanted to go out there and cut a couple of trees, or if there were some trees that had fallen, or just for basically maintenance reasons. So that's about it. But up front, where it affects basically all the abutters, we left that all the same.
So just so I understand that the footprint of the parcel that you want to build on is larger than it was originally.
Not to build the house on, just that we didn't want to limit for accessory buildings, just in case someone wanted to build a shed or a barn or something way out back. I just felt that it was kind of to create that hardship on this property where it's 24 acres. I thought that was a lot if someone wanted to build a barn out back on their property.
Okay.
So we just took that. The house is basically going to go on the same spot. I believe we still have that condition on there that where the house is located. So the house is still going in the same spot. It's 24, like I said, it's 24 acres. So I just didn't know if someone wanted to build a horse barn or something like that. They could, possibly go across and build a barn up on the other side of the wetlands or something. There's quite a substantial amount of land up there, and it's very nice land. So I thought that was a hardship on the property.
Katrina, could you put that drawing back up that you had up a minute ago?
Excuse me.
So, Dave, I guess what I'm not quite following is the if I look at the drawing from March of 2014, which was tied to the original case, the limit of buildable area seems to go right up against a 100-foot wetland buffer.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if that's significant with respect to what we're actually going to allow you to build in. And I'm not on top of the conservation laws, but I mean, can you build a horse barn or something within the wetland buffer?
You would have to go to conservation. My plan is to build something in the upper part and sell the house. Like I said, I just didn't want to limit it to someone building a shed. You can go through conservation, and they allow you to go within 25 feet of a wetland in Grafton. I don't know that anyone would do that, but there's also plenty of uplands out back. I think there's 15 acres. So if someone wanted to put, like I said, a shed or a barn up, they would have to go to conservation and get their approval. I just thought it was on 24 acres, it's basically a hardship limiting it to build on 1 acre out of 24 acres. It doesn't affect, we do have a no build zone around the entire property. I believe it's 50 feet. So I mean, you can't go close to any neighbors. And the house is not going to be out anywhere different. It's just doesn't put a restriction on the entire property. I mean, maybe someone would do maple syrup and want to build a maple syrup hut out back. I have no idea. I just thought it was a limit on the property that someone buying the property be like, so I can't do anything on 24 acres. It seems like a hard restriction, I guess, to build a shed out back, or if someone wanted to, I don't know what people build, I'm just saying anything. Like I said, it could be a maple syrup thing with out back, and you couldn't build one because you have a restriction that you can't build any accessory buildings.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I mean, my plan is not to build anything out on there. And the
Okay.
house is shown where the house is gonna go, so.
Other input from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So that was my question before Dave brought that up, and you said it. So if we allowed him to make this open, not just have a 1 acre build zone, anything that was going to be built, someone would have to go either to, building inspectors, plan, whatever, to get that approved. So if we give him that whole, open it up beyond the 1 acre, there's still that fallback that it's got to be, somebody would have to get it. They can't just go stick something back in the back 9 and not tell anybody. They would still have to get it approved. Correct?
Right.
So there is another layer somebody would have to go through if we at least allowed that. I think it would be, he makes a good case. Just my
No,
thought.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Bill, I have a
Can I ask
question.
a question? Oh, sorry.
No, excuse me.
Go ahead. Wait, who? One at a time. Who's asking to speak? Mr.
I'll
Waller.
defer to Brian.
Oh, thanks. So the last time this was approved, was there any feedback from abutters at that time? Do we know?
I don't know.
Bill, were you around for that one? I'm
Yes,
just wondering if they were noticed. I assume all the abutters had to be noticed by mail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For this one and that one.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious if there was any pushback, especially number 14 and 16, but maybe, it's just a foregone conclusion, or they've been expecting it, and just assumed it was coming at some point.
Looking in the file from last time, I don't have any comments from any of others in the last case when it came before us.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes, my question is to you, Mr. Chairman. This is, what we're considering here is, it's not a reconsideration. It has expired and they're seeking approval to do what they had done before. So I assume that a condition could be placed on this if necessary. My concern is, I voted to approve the plan before, I understood it. But when I look at this excess acreage, the thing I would not want to see, that property cleared for solar panels. That's a sizable piece of property. And I'm wondering if a condition could be placed on that portion of the land that would prevent it from being used for a solar panel farm, because it's quite a few acres that are back there. And when you look at some of the farms that have been, the solar panel farms that are being put in place, unfortunately, sometimes they're put in place and a tremendous amount of wooded area is cleared to accommodate them. They're not always in an open field. So that's the only question I raise directly. Can we put a condition on the land that it could not be used for solar panel farm?
I suppose we could put a condition like that on it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what opposition do we have to solar panel farms besides clear cutting? What's,
I don't have any opposition to them. If I may speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't have an opposition to a solar panel farm. What I would not want to see is that this large parcel of land, which wasn't suitable for a development, and understandably so, and this gentleman wants to put a nice house in there and fit it in, and it works. I would not want to be living in one of those abutting areas, knowing that whatever the acreage is, let's say it's 20 acres left, that they could come in and clear cut that acreage to install solar panels. And that's being done in different places. And what you end up with is the value of, and I agree that they're valuable. I mean, we're all trying to produce cleaner energy, better energy, et cetera. But I would not want to be living next to it with the thought that all of that wooded area out back that is basically, I haven't walked there to look at it out back, but it's basically conserved land. So my only thought is putting a condition on it to ensure that that land with a future buyer, not this gentleman, but let's say the house gets built, somebody comes in and they say, okay, we're going to slip a barn back there, and they get the approval to do the barn. But meanwhile, they still have 15 acres left that they could put in solar panels. And I would not want to see that, because I think that would be unfair to the people that are surrounding that property.
what if they tried to put that in and they put it out to the abutters and the abutters said they were okay with it? What if abutters, that they say, we can't see it, what's wrong with having a solar farm?
That may be the case, Mr. Chairman, if I may speak.
Yep.
That may be the case, Kay, at that point in time. But I'm saying at this point in time, I would not want to see that happen. And this is the point where we can put a condition on it that just keeps it as wooded, whatever is there now. I mean, if he wants to put in a barn, that's fine. He goes through the necessary approvals with the building department. He puts his plan together. It meets all the setbacks, and he has no problem doing that. He keeps it away from the wetlands to satisfy the Conservation Commission, but I'm more concerned with the potential for someone buying this property and 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, saying, you know what? We could put in a solar panel on those back 10 acres, cut all of that wooded area out, and that does have an immediate effect on the abutters around that area. So to answer your question, I don't have any opposition to a solar panel, but I would not want to see one put in here in place of the woods that are there.
Okay. I don't think I agree with limiting the limiting the use of the land. But I understand your point. We can revisit that in a moment. I would like to know if there's any other board members have any comments or thoughts on the application.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Couldn't the lot with that size be subdivided in the future? I think in the previous variance, it said it could support up to 11 lots. So whether it's other home lots or a solar panel farm, I really don't think that's relevant right now.
I kind of agree with you. I mean, the Mr. Mason's making a decision that the cost of crossing the wetland to develop the rest of the land may not be, may not be economic. So, they're making that decision and they're deciding to build the one house. But, I think you're right. They could decide that, we do want to make the investment. I want to build houses. And next thing you know, you've got 11 lots there, 11 houses. So, and it's not just solar panels. I don't know what else they may want to do back there, but it just seems I don't know if I'm entirely comfortable with limiting the use of someone's land like that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I agree that we're trying to possibly limit what Mr. Mason could possibly sell this land for based on what someone may want to do with it, and then that would have to be approved some way through the town. So I feel like I don't know how we have a right to say you can't allow something, right? They'd have to go to ComCon or wetlands, it would have to be approved in another forum. And why should we be the ones to limit the possibility of what could be done on this land?
I can speak. Can I speak a minute?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Mason.
We did put a 50-foot perimeter no build zone around the entire property. So even if someone wanted to do something, they couldn't do it within 50 feet of the property line. So we do have that on the plan.
So to that point, kind of, one of the inputs that we received in advance of the meeting spoke to the removal of the 30-foot no cut buffer, and I know you spoke to that. I'm just kind of curious. Can you tell us again why you changed the 30-foot no cut buffer?
I didn't change the 30-foot no cut buffer. That was always there.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the drawing, and it is different now than what it was in 2014.
In the front, you're talking about?
Huh?
You're talking about in the front, where it abuts those houses?
In 2014, the 30-foot no cut also went along 72 East Street.
Right. We did that because there's no house there. The house is down on East Street, so I didn't feel that a no cut really would benefit. I mean, he has 6 acres of land and his house is down on East Street, probably 1,000 feet away. So I didn't think we needed to provide basically a no cut buffer zone there.
Well, according to the input received from Mr. Carroll, he disagrees. And
okay.
So from Robert Carroll, who lives at 72 East Street, we received, and it said, in the revised plan dated 11/18/20, the 30-foot no-cut buffer that was omitted along the westerly boundary needs to be added back into the plan. So, is there any reason that you would object to having that added back in?
No, I guess I guess I could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily see any downside to that.
I mean, it's just, it limits, anytime you have a restriction on your property, you know, it limits you. And I basically provided, the 30 foot in the front because his house is right there, so it's basically a privacy buffer. There's no benefit to a 30 foot buffer zone. There, he has, I don't know, 1,000 feet to his house. So it's a 30 foot buffer zone isn't gonna, give him any more privacy in his house or his backyard, I guess is what I'm saying.
I tend to feel that you know it was there. He's asked
Yeah.
for it. You're asking for a variance. I think
Mhm.
I think it would be reasonable to put it back.
Okay,
And then his other comment had to do with the well that's already been sunk in the 50-foot no build zone. But we've also received input from, I think, Department of Health saying that a well really doesn't count as a build. So that's okay in the 50-foot no build zone. So that addresses that input from Mr. Carroll. So I think one of the conditions that we want, if anyone objects, would be to add the 30-foot no cut zone back into the western boundary along 72 East Street.
yeah, I mean, the other reason I took it out is because it is being cut right now. It's being cut right now by Mr. Carroll. So I took it out because he is basically cutting that 30 feet right now.
He's
now,
cutting your land.
yes. So basically, he's been cutting it, so I figured I'd just keep it clear. I figured otherwise it's just gonna grow up. So I can cut to where he's been cutting. He goes up there, must go up there with a tractor or whatever. And cuts the upper field. As long as he's aware of that. So basically, we're gonna have to stake out the property and he can't cut the no cut zone on my property that he's saying I can't cut.
It appears from chat that somebody named Bob is on, and I'm betting that's Bob Carroll.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's okay with me. I'm just stating the facts out on the site. That's all.
yeah. Katrina, can you open up Bob and see if he wants to speak?
I think he's typing his answer, so I don't know. It says
All right.
answer.
I mean, he actually didn't indicate that he wanted to, so and that's the way it's supposed to work. So we'll skip it for now. But look, I'm inclined to want to put that 30-foot no cut back. What you and your neighbor work out or do or what have
Okay.
you, that's up to you. Other thoughts or comments from the board? How do others feel about Mr. Yeoman's proposed condition to restrict solar farms?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think Bob Carroll is trying to answer. He's in the chat again. I think he's trying to, in the Q&A as well. And he's asking a question like, can you hear me?
We can't. So Katrina, can you try to?
I think he's in the chat right now.
He is in the chat. We need to somehow allow him to speak, and I don't know how to do that. I'm assuming Katrina does.
Okay, just thought I'd point that out.
Okay, I'll try.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
I don't know how to get on.
Katrina, I can barely hear you, by the way.
All right, let me take my head.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take my headset off. I don't know how to get him live. Let me see.
I saw he texted something.
Well, he's typed in, so I mean, he could type in his questions and we could answer them if he wants to do that. So Bob,
Yeah, I don't
if
think
you-
he has a.
I have no problem with doing the 30-foot cut if that's a condition you guys want to put on it. That's fine with me.
Okay.
So the chat from Bob, I don't know if you guys can see it. I've pulled it up.
Yeah.
It says, yes, I cut the field, but stop at the bound. That's what he said in his message that I just pulled up.
Okay.
And I and the neighbors were good with the 2014 plan. Those are his comments. Why is it
Yep.
being altered now?
Okay. You know, I don't want to belabor this anymore. Mr. Mason's agreed to restore the 30-foot no cut along the western boundary parallel to 72. I think that's fine. I think we'll proceed with that as one of the conditions. Returning to what I was asking as far as Mr. Yeoman's proposal to condition it with no solar panel build. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I understand where Mr. Yeoman's coming from. I just think to do that, they would have to jump through their own hoops, and there's other, entities within the town that need to approve that. And I just don't think it's our place to restrict the land at this level.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments? All right. Ms. Koshvo's other input we have, I think I've talked about what we see from 72 East Street. We had comments from Conservation.
And comments from the
Yeah.
Board of Health, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, from Conservation, from these plans, work appears to be proposed outside the Commission's jurisdiction. If upon further delineation, any proposed work is found within 100 foot of the resource areas, please contact Concom to determine next steps. So that's from Concom, and then Board of Health. I think I alluded to that. I assume, Katrina, you must have asked them about the well in the no-build zone.
I did, because
Yeah,
of the
okay.
comment that came in from 72 East Street. I forwarded the comments to Nancy, the Board of Health, who forwarded them to our, the regional person who works for Grafton. And that was when the comment came back that technically it's a drilled well, it's not a structure, so they can actually drill a well for private use in what's considered a no-build zone, because they didn't build anything.
Okay. All right. So, is there anyone else would like to speak?
So 2 more comments from Bob are, hold on. The bill, why is it being altered now? The build zone should stay the same. Also, the solar panel issue came up in 2014, and that plan was on file with the decision. And what if any barrier, oh, this is from Josh Glicksman. What if
Yeah.
any barrier will run between the road leading in and out of the abutting neighbors?
I don't think there's any barrier. There is a 10-foot no-cut buffer on either side of the road, but I don't think there's any barriers. All right. I don't see any other input at this point. Mr. Yeomans, I think three of us have spoken, not in favor of the solar panel condition. So, I don't think we want to proceed with that. I think as far as findings go, what we had in 2014 or 15, whatever this was, I think still work. A 24-acre lot can support a subdivision of 11 lots. Significant wetlands. Wetlands do not affect other lots in the area. So based on that, we have a hardship owing to the soil conditions unique in the district. And then residential neighborhood, addition of a house is consistent with the residential neighborhood. Addition of a house will be consistent with the intent of the zoning bylaw. So based on those findings, variance will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood. So if the board pleases, I think we can just continue with those exact same findings. And in fact, the actual decision was to allow frontage of 100 foot and a lot width of 50 foot subject to the following condition. The development of land to accommodate the structures would be limited to the defined area only as depicted in Exhibit A. This also includes accessory buildings. And then I think we need an 30 foot no cut zone restored. I'm just going to write this down so we have it. And 30 foot no cut zone added to western boundary, adjacent to 72 East Street. Is that really the western boundary?
I believe it would be west.
Yeah, I think it is. I was just looking for the compass rose on this drawing, but there isn't one that I can find. But I'm pretty sure it's west. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good enough. So I don't see any. Oh wait, we have 4 more chats all of a sudden. What's going on in chat?
Can I get them?
All right, Josh Glickman is wondering if any plantings or fences were going to be put up. Mr. Mason, any intention to put any fences or plantings along the driveway?
No, there's a 10-foot buffer zone, I think, on each side. The driveway is 12 feet. So that only leaves 10, 20, that's like 32 out of the 50.
Okay.
So there's really not much room for a fence. And I wasn't really planning on doing plantings, maybe a couple trees, shrubs or something, but not like a border fence or anything.
Yep. Mr. Carroll's asking in chat here, he says 72 and 66 East Street. So I assume he's referring to where the no cut buffer is. And, I think that's easy, I think that's reasonable as well. So I think we'll change that condition to be a no cut western boundary adjacent to 72 and 66 East Street. It was only along 72 with the smaller buildable area. Now that we've expanded the buildable area, I think it's reasonable to expand that no cut zone as well along those lots. Anything else from anyone?
Hold on a second. Brian from Graza, I just somehow got the ability. You should be able to talk. I think. We
Through
can
the
hear you,
chair,
Brian.
can you hear me? Yeah, I don't know where you're gonna go with the final conditions for your findings if you go to approve the variance, but I just wanted to indicate that relative to the solar farm issue, you got two issues there. I'm not familiar with your zoning bylaws relative to your solar installations, but typically they have an area that can be done for private use under very little regulation, if you will, from zoning versus a solar farm, which you may be talking about if you were looking to develop the whole area. But what I would indicate is I wouldn't want to see you restrict that back land because there is a lot of good back land back there. And this is more like an estate lot, which again, I'm not positive and I wasn't thinking about the zoning aspects relative to an estate farm. That someone may want to do horses if it would be allowed in that area. So they may want to do some clearing. They'd have to go through conservation because any work within 100 feet of the buffer of the wetland would have to be reviewed and approved. But they could clear cut that to put it to pasture for horses or other aspects of agriculture that may be allowable in that area, in that district under your zoning bylaw. So not just solar farms, but there are other aspects that could be in play here that a potential buyer might be looking at this size lot to develop as private single residential lot.
Understood. I think we've spoken to the solar farm issue at this point. All right. No other. I don't see any other input coming in. Any other input from the board? So at this point, I'll close the hearing to public input. I think the motion we want is pretty much as I just read, with the additional condition of 30-foot no-cut zone added to western boundary adjacent to 72 and 66 and 72 East Street.
Do you need a motion to close the hearing, Bill?
I don't know. Do I need a motion to close the hearing? I thought I could just do that. Do I need a motion?
So moved.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
So motion made and seconded, discussion. So on a roll call vote, Ms. DeRosiers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. So now it would be a motion, and I think, as I said, the motion's the same as we did last time. With the additional condition I just read.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, additional discussion. So on a roll call vote again, Ms. DeRosiers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes, I'll defer to the arguments of my fellow board members and the comments made and vote yes.
and Chairman votes yes. So the motion has been granted. Mr. Mason, I think you're familiar with the drill, but 20-day appeal period after our secretary files the decision. Pick up a copy, file it at the Worcester County Registry of Deeds, and start construction soon, and don't let it go this time. By the way, I thought the way we do this is I can end the public input, and it's a motion to end the hearing in general comes now. I think now it's a motion to end the case, but I can't remember. So a motion to end case number, whatever this is, 870. Where'd my agenda go?
73.
Motion to end case number 873, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. Roll call vote again. Ms. DeRosiers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans.
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. We're done. All right, next order of business. Let me get rid of this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
So one of the things on their agenda is Prentice Place and then Adams Road. Prentice Place is first, so let's talk about Prentice Place. Do we have Mr. Papalillo? Can you hear us? Please respond in the affirmative.
Yes.
And Jeff Walsh from Graves.
Yes.
Is there anyone else? Satir, do you have anyone who's?
Yep. Bill Hannigan should be here. His name.
Mr. Hannigan, can you hear us? Excellent. Okay. Why are we here?
Bill,
Yes.
want to take over? No, Bill Hannigan, please.
Okay.
So good evening, excuse me, Bill Hannigan for the record from Hannigan Engineering. This discussion is really about the comprehensive permit and the final documents that needed to be endorsed by the zoning board prior to us moving forward with construction permitting or construction plans and permits. So I sent out an email to the various departments and to the board for distribution. And essentially, the decision to modify the comprehensive permit that was issued by the ZBA under Section 5A, General Conditions, specifically General Condition A1, we submitted an electronic copy of the revised site plans of the comprehensive permit plans for review by the ZBA and its technical peer review consultant, Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering. Part of that requirement was that we also submit the plans to the Water District, Sewer Department, Public Works, and the Planning Board for review and comments. So that was done in November, I believe. I'm looking at the report, but the report only gives me, November 17th is the, November 17th is the day of the plans. So it was in that general, I think it was like November 20th or 30th that we sent everything out. So the next step basically was that Jeff Walsh did his review of the plans to confirm that the requirements that are outlined in the comprehensive permit are noted in the plans. Last week, he sent out a memo relative to that to the board, which we were copied on. There was a detail for granite curbing that was missing from the plan set. So we've agreed to, the next step after this meeting to go over the plans would be that the ZBA would endorse the Mylars for recording. So we agreed that we would add that detail. It's a basic construction detail. There's nothing really, fantastic about it. It's a granite curb detail. It's very typical. I forwarded a copy of that to Jeff in his review. We're going to add that to the plans. And that really was the only element that was missing from the plan set. And I'll let Jeff speak to that as well. One of the other things that we did was we also added the construction phasing to the project, which was a concern of Jeff's, and that's a little bit ahead of schedule because we need that for the pre-construction meeting. And Jeff and I had a conversation about that the contractor has not yet been selected for the project, the site contractor. So we put together that construction phasing plan essentially is one way of doing it because each site contractor may attack the project a different way. It also depends upon the time of year you start doing the work. If we started doing the work right now, obviously we wouldn't be able to go out and start doing the street work because the town doesn't allow construction of the roadways this time of year. So the intent of providing the phasing plan was to provide a method of doing the construction depending upon when the construction started. So when we get closer to the actual construction date, we'll update those plans accordingly with the contractor that's actually going to be doing the work, review that with Jeff prior to actually starting the work on the site, and that should basically wrap everything together for the final construction phasing plans. So the approved plans is what we're seeking for tonight. In order to get the approved plans, we had to take the mediation documentation and prepare a set of plans and have Jeff review it. Once his review is completed, this board, I believe, votes to accept the plans as the approved plans, and then we would then issue a Mylar set to Katrina, who would then circulate the plans for signature by the various board members. That plan set would then be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and that would become the official approved set of plans for the project. Then we would start moving through the construction phase with basically the building department and Jeff overseeing the various aspects of it for construction. So the ZBA would essentially be completed in its duty at that point in time. If there were items that came up during construction, the building inspector would then make a determination of whether it's something that needed to go back to the board for review. We would go back to the board if we needed to review something. If not, we would just move forward with those items. There are other items that are required prior to construction. Specifically, the landscape plan is one of the items that's out there. That's not part of this set, but that would require, once we get this approved set done, now we have a plan set to work with. We then will send the landscape architect will then prepare the landscape plan. That has to be submitted to the town, reviewed by peer review according to the approval. And then from there, that would be basically the last step we would need to actually pull a building permit. But we could still do some of the site work under the ZBA permit. I see that Attorney Dan Hill is on as well. So if he has any comments, and if Jeff has any comments to what I've said, I'd be more than happy to address any questions. You're muted.
So at this point, I think I'd ask Mr. Walsh to comment, kind of summarize where we stand. I mean, hopefully we've all seen your letter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Jeff Walsh with Graves Engineering. Yeah, we did an original or first construction plan review letter. Construction plan review and issued a letter back on May 20th of 2020. And we received plans early December and issued a letter last week on January 7th, basically following up to last May's review letter. And to Bill Hannigan's point, the only issue I had was a very minor one, asking for a construction detail for the granite curbing that's going to go along Prentice Street. We had a few other comments in there. They had been addressed. For example, the construction phasing plan that was required as a condition in the comprehensive permit was included in this revised plan set. I went through the phasing. It made sense. Absolutely, to Bill Hannigan's point, each contractor might want to do some work a little bit differently and would work with the developer. I would like to think to make their intended phasing work, but as a general practice and a general review of the construction phasing, it makes sense. It's basically, if I could summarize, clear the site, get the site ready, do the off-site, bring utilities in, and preparing the site if I does include the stormwater basin and work areas, staging areas that'll be in the part of the parking area. And then later on is the phasing of the different buildings. But nevertheless, that's the summary of my review. I would expect, as we did with the other projects, that if you want, I could look at the final plans that you'll ask to endorse. If you feel that's necessary, I would be glad to accommodate that. But I'm basically here to give you whatever assistance you need, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, I think we absolutely need you to confirm that the plans, we're about to sign are, the plans that you have reviewed and agreed and commented on. So I think that definitely has to happen. I was a little curious about the phasing, the issue with phasing. I know with bigger projects, sometimes phasing gets to be very important because you're building parts of the infrastructure and not other parts and that sort of thing. It just seemed to me that with this project that I was a little surprised to see discussion of phasing, and now that I see where it's been added in, I guess I get what it is, but it seems like there's not a whole lot of, alternatives there. You're going to clear the lot. You're going to, take care of the excavation that needs to get taken care of. But if you're good with that, I'm certainly good with it. So at this point, it sounds to me like, these are pretty much the final plans, just some minor tweaks that need to get added. And then we'll need the Mylars and we'll have to sign them. Other comments or questions from the board, please? Mr. Yeomans.
Yes, I just have one question. I'd just like to say good evening to Soter and Bill Hannigan. I haven't seen your faces. I've talked to you in over a year. The question I have is, one, have there been any changes to the driveways in the movement at all of the buildings? Do they remain the same? Because I know, Jeff, you have a comment in here. All driveways and parking areas need to be submitted to the fire department for approval. Has anything changed that would alter that need?
No, nothing on the plans has changed. The plans were distributed to the various departments, and we didn't receive comments back. I believe we actually had met with the fire department way back when, and this layout basically works with their turning radius of their vehicles, and that was the biggest part of what they were looking for at the time.
Okay, thank you. And one other, and Bill, if I may direct it to you, Bill Hannigan. I haven't seen the new plans, but one of the things that they came up with when we were doing the original review and the hearings for it is there was a sign that was placed on the parking in front of the buildings. The fire department wanted a sign there. I would just ask that Jeff Walsh, that we make sure that that sign gets into the new final plans, because they were insistent on that. They didn't want any parking there that would obstruct the big truck coming through if that need were to come up.
I believe that was a no large vehicle parking or something of that
Right,
effect.
that's just what it was, yeah. And Mr. Chairman, I have one additional question. The question on the landscaping plan, that has to be submitted for a peer review, and I know you have to do that before you can pull the building permit. Do we have a process there, Mr. Chairman, that we would select that landscape architect, or for the peer review, rather?
I don't know that we have a process for that peer review. I think at a high level it would be a case of talking to people like perhaps even Mr. Walsh and Mr. Hill, and finding out people who do landscape design, architecture, that sort of thing, in choosing one of them. I think it would be done in agreement with the applicant, Mr. Papalillo, and it would be paid for with his funds, and they would review and feedback to us. I don't know how much more process there would be in actually making a selection of a peer review. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to, I would not want to see that hinder the process that they've made to get these units built. Would it be possible for our peer review to work closely with their landscape architect to minimize, the approval process? I mean, they're going to come up with Soter, and your team will come up with a landscape plan, and then supposedly we have a peer review that looks at that and said, does that make sense? It would almost seem that if we had that peer reviewer working with their landscape architect at the same time, we come up with something that would, satisfy them, and they could then bring it to the board. Just a thought, Bill.
I think at this
Yeah.
process, if I may say, Mr. Chairman, is that we were waiting for the plans to be approved so that we know what we were working with. And then we were going to engage the services of landscape architects to create the plan that needs to be done before a building permit is issued. I think Mr. Yeoman's suggestion is reasonable. It will save time. I don't have a problem having the peer reviewer working with the landscape architect to agree to a plan that is mutually beneficial, satisfying the intent of the ZBA and doing what we believe it's a reasonable landscape plan for the development itself. So once these plans are signed, then at that point, we can go forward with it. That's what I was hoping of being able to do.
Okay, so let's try and focus on the issue at hand right now, and that's the plans that we're trying to finalize. There was a comment from Graves and then also a response from Mr. Hannigan regarding the retaining wall behind Building 1. And it's not clear to me where we stand with that. Comment number 4 from Graves, a note was added to the retaining wall behind Building 1, requiring the wall to have a fieldstone appearance, which sounds good to me. But then Mr. Hannigan responded back along the lines that seemed to be questioning that. Been having discussions for some time regarding the facade of the wall behind Building 1. Intent is that if there's going to be a wall, it's visible at the intersection, which it will be. It'd be aesthetically pleasing, yes. We'd like to suggest the use of a vegetative screen at the base of the wall to screen the wall from view. It's only 4 foot tall. Series of evergreens sufficient. So where do we stand? What is the intention for that wall?
Mr. Chairman, the wall itself is same type of wall we built at Flint Pond Estates, except that it's only 4 feet tall. And the color will be more an earth tone rather than gray. So if you remember, we had a big, huge retaining wall on the right side of the site as you enter Flint Pond Estates. It's the same type of a wall, except it's only 4 feet and would be more on the brown side than the gray side itself. To augment the look itself, we also propose putting in front of it vegetation, for which will make the wall look better, because once you have some landscaping, things will look much better anyway. That is what we were proposing on doing. And fieldstone look, I don't know what exactly a fieldstone look would look like, but this wall is already built at Flint Pond Estates, and we wanted to do a similar wall for Prentice Place. And that was the comment that we were making. We wanted you to be aware of what we were proposing and what the wall will look like when it's built. So now you have a reference, and with the landscaping plan, we hope that the wall will be pleasing to the board.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I remember what that looked like. What's the name of the street?
Creeper Hill Road.
Flint Pond Road, is that what it is?
Creeper Hill Road.
Oh, it is. All right, so it is Creeper Hill Road.
Yeah. And the site is off of that before you cross the bridge.
Yeah.
So Tara, I think you're leaning on your mic. Have it over here. Mr. Chair, if I may, the wall itself, for the purpose of tonight's discussion relative to the plans, we have the notes on the plan that were required by the ZBA at the time. What I'd like to be able to do is continue with the progress of those plans and getting them endorsed. And then what we can do is we can maybe come up with some samples, some pictures and stuff like that of how we would try to screen that wall and what the wall would look like. And then prior to installing the wall, bring that back to the ZBA and have them either yes, no, or we'd like a little bit something different, or a little bit more vegetation, or a little bit more flowers, less evergreens or whatever, kind of come up with an agreeable solution to that area. That would be my suggestion.
So what you're proposing is that the comment that's in here right now, wall to have fieldstone appearance, stays in the plan, and then you approach us afterwards for, you know, a minor modification.
I think that because we don't, until the contractor gets involved, we don't know whether, we know of some systems that may function this way, but the specific contractor may have a better way of doing it. And that's kind of the benefit of working directly with the site contractor on their ideas, because they might come up with an idea of something that works fantastic, that looks great, and everybody's happy with it. So just doing a fieldstone wall doesn't mean that 3 or 4 years from now, that fieldstone wall is going to look good. We want something that's going to be durable for a long period of time, and look good for a long period of time. So we just wanted a little bit of flexibility on that. That was the intention of the comment.
So you didn't really answer my question. So I'll be more specific with the question. Does the comment that says wall to have fieldstone appearance, does that stay in the plan?
I think it could, but
Okay.
we could say final one. We could change the comment, the notation to be final wall to be selected and reviewed with ZBA prior to installation. That's another way of doing it. It's just changing a note on the plan, as long as Jeff doesn't have any objection to that.
Let's leave it as wall to have fieldstone appearance. And, you know, I don't know where those words came from, but I do know that we spent a lot of time about how this whole project looks from Shrewsbury Street, and that's the language that somehow arrived into the plan. So I'd like to just leave it there. And if you want to do something different, then, you know, once you know exactly what you want to do, come see us and let's talk about it, I think would be the way to proceed.
I think that works.
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
We will be dealing with the landscape architect anyway, so the appearance of the wall from the street could be taken care of by landscaping work, and it will not be an issue. I don't have a problem with what is being suggested. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So, you know, I think we're all in agreement. Any thoughts or other questions or comments from the board? So at this point, I think, you know, you need to make, you being Mr. Hannigan or, you know, the applicant, there's a minor change, a quick review by Graves, and then somebody gets us the Mylars and we sign them.
Okay. Sounds perfect. So when I make that change, Jeff, what I'll do is I'll just put a set of PDFs together and email them over to you for your final review.
That's fine with me if that's fine with the board.
I can copy Christina when we do that as well. Katrina when we do that, just to make sure it's all in the loop.
Okay.
And, you know, it may take a while. Unfortunately, we can't just all sign them someday at a meeting. We're going to have to cycle through, and for what it's worth, the building right now is closed, and I don't know when it's supposed to reopen. So, you know, it may take a while to get them signed, but we'll do the best we can.
Thank you.
Understood.
Yep.
We're
Mr.
all set.
Papalo, did you want to say something?
No, I'm all set. I'm just
Okay.
waiting for you to say the final words.
No, I think we're good. When do you plan to build? When do you plan to break ground?
We have a construction loan closing the end of this month. So the next step would be, after what we're doing, is to get the landscape architect on board and work to create the landscape plan. Once I do that, I'm hoping by that time we'll be able to start clearing. So whether it is March, February, April, it all depends how things go. In this day and age, nothing can be planned, you know, the way you want to. Everything takes time. So
you're hoping this spring, though, you're going to be building?
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully.
Yeah, okay. Good, okay. All right. If there's nothing else for Prentice, we can move on.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
So to you, Bill.
Good night.
So next up would be Adams Road. Discussion of completeness of road acceptance. Not really sure why we're here tonight, but I think Mr. Angarani or somebody asked to be on the agenda, so here we are. So Mr. Angarani or Attorney Bornstein or somebody want to talk to us and let us know why we're here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don Bornstein, attorney for the applicant, Johnson and Bornstein, 12 Chestnut Street in Andover. I believe we're here more as a check-in. You'll remember back in November, the planning board basically voted to send us back here. We had a sort of a game plan memo at that time from Dan Hill. I think we're really checking in to make sure there's nothing necessary from the applicant at this stage. I know there's an additional consulting engineer who's been hired and has begun work. And I believe there's one comment from Mr. Walsh that we wanted some clarification on, or maybe some direction from the board on how we finalize, if you'll remember, the 81X plan that was squaring away some easements and some drainage easements. So there was one item, I believe, that we needed some possible either further direction from Mr. Walsh or maybe some input from the board on.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is Jeff Walsh, Graves Engineering. The 81X that was sent over to me a few weeks ago is seeking to reinstate a drainage easement on the back of lot, I apologize, it's 49, lot 49, a lot that was conveyed from Mr. Hingarani to an owner. And on that plan, it also seeks to reinstate some 10-foot wide drainage easements on lots 41 through 45 that were eliminated a number of years ago when drainage infrastructure on that side of the site was eliminated in favor of the stormwater basin on lot 41 and 42, I believe. I'm just concerned why we're reinstating those drainage easements on lots 41 through 45. It's possible that the 81X would reinstate them, but nevertheless, when it comes to road acceptance, they would not be conveyed to the town. They're certainly not needed by the town. Rather than me put together a letter, it seemed more prudent to have this type of discussion with all parties involved. So that's my concern is what's the intention is with those easements on lots 41 through 45.
Is there a drawing or something that anyone could display for us? I mean, I have no idea what you're referring to, Jeff.
Understood. I do not have a drawing handy that I could, even if I could share my screen, I don't have a drawing handy.
Okay.
I can do it, I think. Bill,
Okay.
give me a minute.
I have a paper version in front of me.
Do one of these.
I tried that before,
No.
guys. It didn't work.
No, don't do that, please. No.
Okay, I have a copy of it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Pat.
Okay,
Okay.
great. I've got a copy. Let me try to share my screen here.
I think Katrina has to allow the screen sharing to happen.
Okay, Katrina, can you do so, please?
You're muted.
Should be able to do it now. I put allow panelists and allow everybody.
Okay, I'm going to give it a try. Okay, we're sort of live.
There we go.
Okay, there it is. Jeff, do you want to proceed or do you want me to?
You've got control of the mouse, Pat, if you
Okay.
would, please.
Yeah, so the easements that Jeff is talking about are here, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. And these were originally put on the plan because we actually had drainage coming from this area, coming down and then into this back basin that's back here. And we rejiggered the drainage, and Jeff was involved in that a number of years ago. And basically the need for the back basin disappeared. And then if I can put on my legal hat, and Don, please step in and whack me if necessary. But we then subsequently, about 4 or 5 years ago, filed an original 81X plan that eliminated these back lots. But my understanding is that when conveyances were then made to some of these lots, the conveyance attorney didn't make reference to the 81X plan. And when Dan got involved, he suggested we refile this new one showing the easements so that subsequent title attorneys didn't have confusion when the lots were reconveyed. So the new 81X basically adds those back in, and although they're not functional, I think from a title perspective, they reflect what was conveyed on 41 through 45. But now I'm getting into dangerous territory, so I'll step back and let greater expertise continue.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll jump in and just add something to that. So this was came at Dan Hill's suggestion along a discussion with myself that there was a need to clarify a prior 81X plan to clarify the easements. I think really around lots 48 and 49. And I believe the 81X plan you have here now restores all of the easements that were that basically were prior to that last 81X plan. And I think the only question before the board, and I think it's getting a little more complicated than it needs to be, the only question before the board was, did we also want to show that that easement along the back of lots 41 through 45? And I think what Jeff Walsh has flagged has said, no, we don't need you to also address that easement that runs along lots 41 through 45, because as it turns out, that easement isn't needed by the town. The drainage that was planned to be within that easement is not serving the roadways. The town won't be taking that easement. So unless there's some other reason to show that easement on the plan, it might be better to just eliminate it since it's not going to be something conveyed to the town. As far as the applicant's concerned, we're happy either way. We could show it, it could be there. We can eliminate it to make sure there's no confusion that the easement, that narrow easement that runs along the back of lots 41 to 45, that it's not going to be conveyed to the town. We've discussed this, I believe, previously with the zoning board, that easement is no longer necessary because the town would not be taking that upon any acceptance of the road.
So I guess I don't necessarily remember discussing the disposition of the easements. I do recall though that this drainage was thought to be necessary, but it turns out it's not. But I guess one question I have right now is for lots 41 through 45, do those, I assume all those lots have been conveyed, do they actually have those easements in their deeds?
My memory is, Mr. Chairman, that those lots were conveyed off the original plan that had this easement across the back of it, not off what I'd call the amended plan, that the original 81X plan. So that prior 81X plan dropped this, but the attorney who prepared the conveyances didn't use that plan for his conveyance. He used the original plan, referred to it. So okay. Those may very well have been reserved from those sales of those lots. The question becomes today is going forward on the most recent plan of easements, this new 81X plan that we've been working on, is it prudent to show this easement 41 through 45 or not? The real purpose of this at the end of the day, this 81X plan that we've been working on with supervision from Mr. Walsh, is that it would be ultimately used to convey or be consistent with the conveyance of easements to the town. So if those easements aren't going to be conveyed to the town, this plan might be cleaner to remove them. Does that roughly summarize what your suggestion is on that, Mr. Walsh?
It is, and what I wanted to make clear to everyone is the reason I brought the subject up is not only does this 81X plan have the easements on lots 41 through 45, but along with it, I received revised as-built plans, acceptance plans, specific sheets of each, and revised grant of easements that clearly called out conveyance of those easements on lots 41 to 45 intended to go to the town. In those, the acceptance plans and as-built plans and grants of easements we've been reviewing over the last couple of years. It wasn't up until I received this set of documents earlier this last month that these easements were brought forward, not only in the 81X, but in the draft documents. They're going to convey the roads and such to the town.
So the reason I'm asking about whether or not those easements are on the deeds for these lots is, if they are, then I don't understand why we wouldn't just continue to show them. I mean, if they are, they're there. I mean, we can't make them just go away by not putting them on this drawing, I don't think. And it seems to me that if the people have bought those lots and they bought them encumbered by an easement, then we should continue to leave them there and show them. Dan, did you want to speak?
Yeah. So the easements themselves have not been granted. So what the developer did was reserve easements. So when he conveyed lots 41 to 45, the deeds probably said something to the effect that the developer reserves an easement as shown on the plan, and that's that 10-foot wide strip. So the idea here was that this 10-foot wide strip was going to be conveyed to the town as a drainage easement, but now we've all decided that it's not necessary. So the fact that it's on a plan doesn't really carry any legal significance, because there is no actual easement, because the developer is not going to convey one to the town. So it can come off, and I think it's fine to come off because it's not going to be used. So I actually think it's clearer to take it off, and the record can reflect that the zoning board decided it doesn't need it, doesn't want it, and that's why it's off the current plan. It doesn't really matter, but the most important point, though, is the fact that we don't want that in the easement document that's been drafted. There's a Word document called Grant of Easements, and that's what Jeff was referring to, and that has this in it. So we want that taken out because the town doesn't want to acquire an easement over this property.
So, so my next question maybe goes to Mr. Gardner, because I'm pretty sure you did all the engineering for this and was the one who said at some point that we needed drainage here. I mean, why did it turn out we don't need these drainage easements?
Bill, we have to go back about 5, 6, 7 years ago. But there's a long swale that comes down the back of these lots into a shallow basin right here.
Yep.
And we ran the hydrology on that, and we worked with Graves, and we determined that was sufficient to take care of the post-development flows, and that previously that water was going to come down like this and then run down through here. There's some ledge outcrop down in this area that was going to take a lot of excavation, and then the water was going to run down this way through some manholes into the basin in the back. And it just became apparent, I think, during construction that it made more sense to eliminate that run of manholes through 41 through 45. And we ran that by the zoning board. So you guys were involved in that at the time, and that's how it played out.
Okay. I just, it's like, there's an easement, put it in quotes, and we're about to make it go away. And once it's gone, you can't get it back if you ever need it. So that's why I'm just pushing a little bit against what we're talking about doing here, but it seems like everyone is very comfortable that we won't need any sort of drainage or anything there. They've been built there already. Lots are built, I assume, and sold, and it's not needed. So it sounds to me, based on what Mr. Hill is saying, is that we should just take this off the plan and I think also remove it from the description of the easements. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, you just take it off the plan. There's nothing that needs to happen on the deeds. Again, it's just a reservation. It's like a paper street. If it never gets built, it never gets built. This is the same thing. It can be taken off this plan, and there's no consequence. I mean, I think the more important thing is take it off the grant of easements. And then this plan also, I think, clarifies the drainage easements on lots 48 and 49. And I haven't taken a close look at this specific plan, but I think there was a discrepancy between this plan shows a 30-foot wide access easement on 48, and I thought a prior plan showed it as 40 feet. So I guess I'm a little concerned about what the title shows, and if lots 48 and 49 have already been conveyed, what are they being conveyed subject to? So I don't know if the developer can answer that question, or Don.
Yeah, I can step in real quickly. 48 has not been conveyed, nor has it been built. So it's just an open lot. 49 has been conveyed, but the lots or the easements shown on 49 have not changed from the original subdivision approval.
Great. So 49 was conveyed subject to a 20-foot wide easement.
Correct.
Great. Okay.
And if I may, on lot 48, that what we're seeing on this plan, the 30-foot wide drain and access easement, that is consistent with the plans we reviewed in 2017 when that 30-foot wide drain and access easement came to be. I forget what the original plan showed, but it was either didn't exist or was much less than 30 feet. That became the access way to the new basin. There was a notice of project change that we went through. And to Dan's point of 30 feet versus 40 feet, we have seen in the recent draft acceptance plans, at least one case where that 30-foot drain was drawn and labeled as a 40-foot wide drain and access easement, plus the other 10 feet over on lot 47. So I think that's where the confusion might have come in with that one iteration of an error. But nevertheless, what we're looking at here is in fact consistent with the MPC documents I have.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. We initially showed the easement on 48 as a 40-foot, and that was simply an error on our part. But the NPC that was approved by the zoning board 3 or 4 years ago was added it as a 30-foot, and it was partially done, Bill, because the house on 47 had been conveyed, and the contractor had the option of moving the access road for the basin partially into 47, but as a courtesy to the owner. And because 48 had not been built, we thought we can simply put the roadway down through the entirety of 48, and that's what they did.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a case of trying to work with the neighbors and work with you.
Yep. Okay.
Bill?
Okay. So, yep. Go ahead.
If I may?
Yes.
Yes. The only question I have is, I think, kind of hitchhike on what you said, Mr. Chairman. These 41 through 45, they've been conveyed, their houses on them, people own them. They have deeds that I would say reflect the plan as it's shown here. Is what we're doing tonight affect any of, does it clutter up a passing of those properties to a new owner? Does that come up as in a title search or as a problem for them? In other words, it's showing on their plan, I would assume now, and now it's not going to be showing? That's the only
I have
question.
Yeah, Bill, I have a suggestion, and your comments sort of triggered what I was thinking a few minutes ago. That maybe there's a middle path, and I think we'd have to get Dan's okay on this and Jeff's concurrence. But what this plan currently shows is the 10-foot easement that ran behind 41 and 45 on the original subdivision plan. So we haven't made any changes. It's simply reflecting that exactly. It could remain on this plan because we have a plan on record, an 81X on record, that shows those gone. So the addition of the easement back was simply to sort of take care of that confusion. But the conveyance document that Dan Hill was referring to could take out the grant of that easement to the town, so that it's shown on the plan as a reflection of easements, but in fact, it's not ever conveyed to the town itself. And that may be a way of trying to of clarifying this. But I would defer, I think, to Dan and Don.
I don't think it matters, and I don't have, I don't have an objection from the town's perspective whether that easement is shown on this plan or not. It doesn't matter. I think Pat's idea is fine. As a practical matter, it's not going to be used. So the owners are not going to really notice it, and title examiners, all they're going to do is they're going to say, "Oh, I see an easement on the back of the property. Big deal. It's not going to affect title. It's not going to affect marketability."
Okay.
I'm fine with it there. And again, my main concern was taking it out of the grant.
And that's easily done. It's just deleting a couple of paragraphs.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board?
Bill, there's the issue
And
of
actually,
lot 76. I don't know if you want to bring that up now or.
Hang on, let's hold that for a moment. I guess I'm actually, I can't see everybody in the current display app, so if anyone wants to speak, just speak up, please. Otherwise, the applicant, I think at this point, has a direction that you needed in regards to this matter, correct?
Correct.
Yes, I think I agree, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Dan, lot 76, what do we want to talk about there?
Yeah, I can give you a quick update since I talked to Sean Reardon this afternoon. And Pat, if you can release your screen so I can share my screen.
There you are.
All right. So this is a Mass GIS map of the neighborhood. Lot number 3 is that's 3 High Point Drive. It's also lot 76. That's owned by Nancy Piccone. This is the open space. You can see my mouse. That's the wooded area. And then you've got houses that are built along here. I'm going to open up the aerial photograph. I'm going to do something here. Okay. So this is the house. This is the property that has experienced flooding in the past. The way we left it was that the board retained, at the applicant's expense, an independent civil engineer with specialty in stormwater design and hydrology to review the plans and to provide a second opinion, third opinion, you name it, as to whether the project as currently built out has resulted in additional flows onto this lot 76, additional flows as compared to the former condition as a wooded lot. So the board hired Sean Reardon from Tetra Tech at the applicant's expense. Sean went to the property this week, and he reported back to me today. And his opinion is going to be that, yes, in fact, the development of these lots here with houses and manicured lawns and grading has resulted in flows that exceed the pre-development flows onto lot 76. And that there's inadequate drainage controls along the perimeter of these lots, so that there is flow from what the watershed area that Sean believes is applicable is lots 67, 65, 63, and then these frontage lots 17, 15, 11, 9, and 7. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Now, this is the area right here, the pool house that experienced erosion and flooding a few years ago. And Sean's comment was that there's actually now a natural swale on the backs of these two properties, 7 and 9, so that water that hits these two properties probably does not flow into lot 76. It probably hits the swale and just kind of flows in this direction towards the intersection. But there likely still is flows, sheet flow coming off of 67, 63, 65, and then these two properties here at 11 and 15. So I asked Sean, what he thought the solution would be, and he said, well, the obvious solution would be to create a swale starting in this location at this corner at 11, between 11 and 15, running along here at the back of 11, and then running down 9 and 7 down to, again, this intersection where there is drainage controls here. And then I believe, Jeff can correct me, but I believe there's a culvert of some sort that then pipes the water to the pond. This is something I think that Pat Garner had proposed a year ago or 2 years ago. My understanding is that the developer does not have easement rights on these properties to do that. He doesn't have easement rights on lot 76. So one option would be to acquire easement rights. If that cannot happen, there may be an engineering solution to build something here, perhaps a hole, some kind of detention basin that can capture water that comes off of these lots in the back. But that's not tested, it hasn't been proven, it hasn't been designed. But that's not Sean's scope. Sean's scope was to simply determine whether water is in fact coming from these lots to lot 76 in a manner that exceeds the pre-development condition. So he's going to draft up a report. I'm sure he'll share that in draft form with Jeff and myself and the applicant before it's finalized. But I wanted to just give you an update of where things stand today. Just another comment that I wanted to make is that there is an easement from High Point Drive to the open space. This is the open space here. And this open space was proposed to be conveyed to the town at some point. There is an easement right here on this easterly side of lot 11 as it runs up against lot 15. It's only, I think, 10 feet wide, and it's an access easement. So it's possible that the developer could do something on the open space that could potentially mitigate the flows. However, you'll see from this aerial photograph, it looks like the person who bought 15 High Point Drive has built a fence that encroaches on 11, if these lines are accurate. And this fence is actually in the location, it appears, of the 10-foot wide easement, which would hinder access. So
Yeah, Dan, if I can interject very quickly, I know that the fence actually runs exactly down the property line, because when the fence was being built, they called me out and we found the rebar corners, and so they ran a string line between the monument on the front and the corner in the back. So it's a GIS error.
Well, then what's this thing here, though? I mean, look.
That's a retaining wall that's built in the easement.
So this is
built along the edge of. It's built along the edge of the easement.
It looks really narrow. I mean, I'm just, to get an excavator through here, it looks really tight to me, but.
Yeah, Dan, I've walked that easement, and you're not gonna get an excavator in there. That is a retaining wall. It's, it's probably 4 feet or more, but it's, you're not gonna get an excavator down there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just jump in for a minute. So this information we're just hearing now for the first time. So the development team really isn't privy to this. We haven't seen anything from Mr. Reardon. The game plan here was that we were funding Mr. Reardon's review. We'd hear back from him. If he determined there was a drainage issue there, then we'd discuss and work with him what some potential solutions are. So. I don't know that this issue is ripe for consideration by the board tonight. I think that conversation, even the very beginnings of that conversation have not begun because we don't have Mr. Reardon's information yet. I appreciate Dan's paraphrasing of it, but I think the engineers have to talk about what Mr. Reardon saw just, this week within the last couple of days and see what options there might be for it. And I think that's for the consideration of the board's next session.
Understood. Okay, so anything else, Dan, you want to add in here at this point? Okay, so obviously, Mr. Reardon is as Mr. Bornstein has said, we need to put the report in writing and come up with some next steps from there. But I'm glad to hear that this is moving forward. It's all a necessary step. It is all necessary steps to getting this project finalized, which I know Mr. Hingorani wants to do. Anything else that we need to talk about with respect to Adams Road Trust at this point?
Nothing further from us, Mr. Chairman. I think that was, I think we've heard what we needed to hear.
And I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I think we're done with Adams Road. And the only other thing is minutes, and quite frankly, I'm going to table minutes again. And I promise that I will review them before our next meeting. Do we have any other pending cases?
No, nothing has come in.
Okay. So we don't need to schedule anything at this point. But I mean, do we want to try and schedule a next meeting to talk about Adams Road further, or we want to wait maybe till the engineers do their thing and then maybe Mr. Hingorani comes back to us requesting to come before us, something along those lines?
I would wait until Sean files a report.
Okay.
I think that's still going to take several weeks.
All right, sounds good. All right, so we're done with Adams Road. There's nothing else on the agenda. Anything I'm missing from anyone on the board? And at this point, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Moved.
second.
On a roll call, Ms. DeRosiers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. We are adjourned.